I don't know how I'm gonna get electricity from up here down to there, but I'll try.
This project was so involved.
I'm gonna be installing this 400 amp panel and running electricity from here over my head, across this and way down there, up and over, and down to the ground, and down the hillside, down this way, let me show you, and landing right here. I'm gonna show you the entire process and how much this entire thing costs to do. So gear up, because this one is a hard one.
We are upgrading the main panel and installing a 400 amp panel with disconnect switches. This will allow me to have 200 amps to go to my house, as well as 200 amps to go towards my barn. Now, don't worry, the power has been shut off by the utility company, and we will have to pass an inspection with the county before we get power back on. Also, that is my dad, who has some electrical experience and is helping me install this.
The nice thing about this panel is we have a disconnect switch that can turn off the power that runs into the house right here. And we have a disconnect switch that we can turn off on the inside of here and turn off power that runs out to the barn. So what were my options for getting power to the house, down to the barn? So I could either hang a wire above ground from up here, going down there, or we could find a way to get the wire to a spot where I could then dig it into the hillside, get it underground, and run power down there. I chose to go underground.
I think most people in this scenario have a flat yard and they rent a machine like a trencher to dig out the trench. All I got are my muscles and this pickaxe to rely on. I am burying conduit with wire in it, and I'm going just a bit deeper than the head of this shovel. Now my muscles already gave up, and I let my mindless determination take over. And that's me getting away because I'm scared I might explode. But then I realized I won't explode, and then I need to go turn off the gas to the propane line that I just punctured. Here's how I went about fixing it. This is 3/8 inch copper pipe. I'm cutting the pipe with this pipe cutting tool, slide on a 1/2 inch flare fitting, grab flaring clamp, open it up, clamp it down at the 1/2 inch opening with about 1/8 of an inch of pipe sticking out. Crank it down tight. Grab the flaring tool, put it in the center of the pipe, crank that down, and flare the pipe out. Take it all off. Fit, look good. Take this 1/2 inch to 1/2 inch connector, screw it on. Repeated the process with a new piece of pipe. Check out that flare. Check out that fit. Connect the other end of the pipe and tighten it down. Now, I didn't film the actual flaring of the pipe, but here's a shot of the fixed pipe. Really, it was not that bad of a fix. Next, I turned on the propane, didn't hear any leaking, and got back to work, carefully digging around the dirt and finishing the trench up the hillside. I hope as you watch this that it gives you a sense of what it takes to do something like this. Sometimes, to get through a project, you have to work when you don't want to. And this is one of those times, at night, after the kids have gone to bed. All I wanted to do was drink a beer, watch the movie Dune, but instead I rented this jackhammer, broke through some of the rocky terrain, and continued digging out my trench. That is no ordinary rock that I'm jackhammering through. That is concrete. That is the foundation of an old building. And it was painfully slow to go through. You know, this last bit of digging really had me thinking, surely the hardest part of this project has passed me. But I'll soon discover that running wire is no joke. And with the trench dug out, let's get to the hardest part of this project. Let's start by taking a look at our supplies. Here I have 200 feet of aluminum 4-AUG wire, or 444 2-wire. There are 4 wires in this bundle, 2 hots, 1 neutral, and 1 ground. They're all going to fit into 2-inch Schedule 40 conduit, and I have some elbows and LBs or different conduit fittings to help change direction. We started by mounting the conduit with some brackets across this porch. Then we began feeding the wire through the conduit, and so far things were going pretty smooth. I wouldn't say that this is better than a professional. In fact, I would call this whole thing a little bit hilljack. And being the non-professionals that we are, things started to become less smooth. This is our first 90-degree change of direction, and with it, the struggle of getting wire through the conduit. We had to change our strategy and get the wire as straight as possible to be able to slide up this fitting. If you are like me and didn't know, wire of this size is super hard to bend and manipulate. And once we got it up there, we were able to fit one wire through at a time. Sweet, the rest should be easy. Actually, no it won't. Pulling wire through this one piece of long conduit proved rather difficult. Neither of us could get a grip on anything, hands are covered in snot, it's freezing outside. But the hilljacks that we are figured we could use the weight of a car, or in this case a minivan, to help us pull the conduit up to the wall. I thought to myself, heck yeah. And you know, I love this shot here because my dad and I really don't have any creative solution to finish this side out. And we just went with what we know, brute force. We wrestled every piece of conduit until we had everything in place. Like I said, this whole thing, it's a little hilljack. So far, we're about halfway in distance of running this wire. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the total run of this wire is about 185 feet or so, and I've bought 200 feet of wire just to be safe and hopefully have enough extra at the end. So now we are making another turn and bending this heavy wire and shoving conduit and hanging it up. One challenge we had was sliding the conduit across the entire length of wire, one piece at a time. Again, this wire is physically hard to deal with, and the steepness of the hill added to that challenge. So here's something my dad taught me, which is using a heat gun to melt the conduit so we could add a slight bend to get this to go in our desired direction. Maybe that's how the pros do that, or maybe they cut little pieces like this to get around a corner. Again, this is my first time ever doing anything like this, and I was finding solutions as I went. I didn't glue the pieces of conduit up at the house, but I did glue up all the pieces of conduit that went underground. Maybe it's overkill. Really, all I can say about this is that this made sense to me, to do it this way. And I'm not saying this is how you should do it, but if you are someone who knows what they are doing, then please comment below on how you would have gone about this. That's why I love YouTube. It's a great place for perspective, learning, and making fun of each other, or dudes like me. By this point, I've been at this for about 4 or 5 days, spread out over a few weeks. I'm finally at the bottom, and thankfully I have enough wire to reach the barn. When I started this, it was fairly warm out, but now winter has brought its frigid greeting, and this wire has become stiff and even harder to manipulate. And I'm going to shove these wires, I'm going to pull them in, I'm going to squirt this snot on them, and shove, and pull, and shove, and pull, and boom. There, done, finished, finito, conquered, achieved, kaput. It's been done did, except it's not done did. It's like day 6 of this project, and I don't know why, but I thought a knife was going to cut through this wire. I don't know, my brain is just fried here and I'm exhausted. But I took a step back, I tried using a reciprocating saw, but that didn't work. There was too much vibration and my lone battery died. So looking for some solution, I just clamped down the wire to this little metal chop saw, and voila. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but you guessed it, 4 clean cuts, or a successful hack job. I'm glad I'm wearing these really thick gloves, because cutting through the sleeve of this wire is about the hardest I've ever pushed on something. Maybe there's a different tool or technique out there for this, but I was able to get all 4 cut off for the hookup. Before that, I'm testing the power to make sure this box is functioning, and turning it off to test my multimeter to ensure that I'm not going to electrocute myself. I don't think there's a scenario where you touch 240 volts and live. So, yeah. Now spreading this antioxidant paste to protect my wire from oxidation. Don't know what that really means. I just know you should do it. So bending this wire when it is this short, it is really hard. And I started with this neutral wire, and there's probably a certain amount of torque you got to add here. I just went with the mindset of real tight is just right. I shoved in the first hot wire, cranked it down hard, shoved in another hot wire, cranked it down real hard. Then began the trouble with the ground wire. This is kind of embarrassing to show, but in the spirit of me saying things are a hack job, here is the realest hack job. I could not get this wire to bend and go into that ground lug, so I made a rash decision and cut the wire to slide up from underneath. However, that proved difficult, and even after twisting the wire and reattempting to shove it back up, I ultimately had to unstrand some wires and get some of it to slide up into the ground lug. Not pretty. I figure as long as the connection is solid, we are good to go? Question mark?
Time out. What's up, y'all? It's Future Me, and Future Me just wants to tell you that I did get an electrician to come out and look at my ground mess. They told me, yeah, that's not the code, and I could lose amperage by not having full connection with the wire. So they went ahead, spliced the wire, fixed the whole thing for me, and I'll go ahead and show you guys that right now.
All right, let's go back to the past, and I'll show you everything that I did, including my grounding mistake. I will say again that I don't really understand this fully. I am not an electrician, but watching a bunch of YouTube videos got me to this point. Now, I needed to test this. Tested that I was getting 240 volts coming in. Tested that I had 240 volts going out on the two hot wires that I just hooked up, and tested that I had 120 volts with each hot when paired with the neutral. Then I went down to the barn and tested the wires again in the same fashion and got the same readings. As I close up this panel, a huge sense of relief and joy hit my system that I couldn't help but smile. Electrical to my barn is done did.
Things I would do different: hire a professional. Don't follow this step-by-step. Hire an electrician, please. Don't shock yourself, don't electrocute yourself. One of the unknowns I have about this project is, am I gonna have to upgrade the size wire coming into the house? That's something I need to consult with the utility company and see if that's something I need to upgrade in the future, is bigger sized wire coming into the house to be able to support 400 amp. Another thing I would have done different on this project, I would have used a bigger fitting to get around the corner. I used a 90-degree elbow here, and it was just too small, and fitting all 4 of those wires to get around this turn through this little guy right here, it was really difficult and was one of the hardest parts of this project. So what I could have done is gotten a bigger box kind of a fitting, and that would have made life a little bit easier getting around this turn and going the other direction. So yeah, this is a really long run of conduit. I didn't glue these pieces together, except whenever I got down the hillside and went into the dirt, I did glue the pieces together. So is this conduit gonna crack over time? Is it gonna break? Another unknown I have is, how is the power gonna hold up over a really long run all the way down to the barn? Am I gonna have power loss? This wire that I'm using is aluminum, which isn't as conductive as, say, something like copper, but it's way cheaper than copper. But we'll find out over time when I'm running table saws and dust collection and multiple things at once.
Yeah, baby. And just like that, this project is done. And as promised, here's a cost breakdown for you.
Now it is wintertime and it is freezing outside. So I'm gonna go and work on the inside of this building. Check out the next episode because I'm gonna frame the entire inside and paint the ceiling. We'll see you next time.